Hello and welcome to episode 57 of the Climate Skeptic podcast. I'm your guest host, Ellie Hodges. Now, wind has been an essential climate variable in the Met Office's own words since it started publishing its annual State of the UK Climate Report, right up until this year, when the dedicated wind and storms chapter simply vanished that is, just as decades of gust speed data showed a clear downward trend, one that's rather inconvenient for a government throwing billions at offshore wind. Well, joining me now to talk about the Met Office's disappearing wind chapter is the Daily Skeptic's environmental editor, Chris Morrison. Welcome, Chris.
Hello, Ellie. Nice to be here.
Really good to have you with us. So, Chris, walk us through it. Last year's report had a full chapter on wind and storms, and this year it's just gone. What happened?
Well, in fact, not last year, but it's going back, I think, to 2017 when it first did this annual report. They do this annual report of the UK climate. It's an annual thing, and they publish it in I think, some sort of meteorological journal. And they've always had a number of chapters based on what they call essential climate variables. They're trying to sort of get the data of that year, put it into some sort of context of various climate variables, and that would include temperature, rainfall, precipitation, and until this year, wind. And obviously they would discuss wind and storms and this sort of thing. This year it's absent from it. And this has drawn a number of people to sort of wonder why, including the uncharitable, as I call them, and those who are even inclined to conspiracy theories, because wind speeds in Britain have been declining for the last 40 years. You wouldn't know that, of course, all the hoo-ha fuss they make of all the storms. Incidentally, the storms, which they go into in great detail, are still in the book, but not the overall trend. They've simply disappeared that. They themselves have got into a bit of hot water in over storms. They obviously seem to be of the persuasion that storms are getting worse. They produce computer models that suggest storms are getting worse in the near future. Somebody actually said that on Radio 5, and they had to withdraw it because there is no proof. There is just computer modelled evidence. Computer modelled evidence is worthless, and the actual observation tells you what's really happening, and that's what's been abolished in this latest climate report, the actual wind. And they had quite a well-known graph that was often reproduced showing the wind speeds over I think it was three particular gusts, something like 40, 50, 60 miles an hour, or maybe it was 70, I can't remember. But it had it under three of those particular categories, and you saw that in each one, the wind speed had been declining since around 40 years or so, and it's continued to decline. And in fact, we know this because we know that the wind speeds are declining across Europe. My view is, I take this view as a sort of long-term now, a student of science, observer of these things. It's probably a natural variation of some sort. It's very complex atmospheric science with the jet stream and all this sort of thing. But it's not a huge decline, but it is a significant and noticeable decline. So the uncharitable and those of a conspiracy nature are starting to wonder, well, why have they done that? This is vital scientific evidence. We need, the Met Office have got, I think it's something like 200 weather stations measuring the wind across Britain. Why has it suddenly stopped telling us the actual trend? Some people, of course, say that the Met Office is paid for by the government, and maybe the government, if you're particularly conspiracy-minded, doesn't really want to promote the idea that wind speeds are dropping because they're trying to throw billions of pounds to get outside investors to put up wind turbines. I don't know. I couldn't possibly comment. It could be that the Met Office is now so firmly rooted down this net zero rabbit hole, they simply seem to be losing the will to produce any independent scientific data that shows that perhaps the weather is not getting worse. I don't know. I mean, I find it inexplicable. They say that, they produce the temperature chapter, and I think they talk in the book about how certain things are being discarded for space reasons. I can't imagine them discarding the temperature chapter. I mean, the temperature chapter gets to seem bigger and bigger every year. I can't see them discarding the participation chapter, but they're quite happy to discard the wind chapter. And we must really sort of wonder why. But I think I'm afraid it's another nail in the coffin for the Met Office. I've been commenting in detail on Met Office. And I think it's a sort of sad story, really, a little bit like the BBC. These are all institutions that, I mean, particularly, myself, I've been on this, in this country, on this planet for a few decades. We admired the state broadcaster, the state meteorologist. We trusted them. I don't think we trust the BBC anymore. I think it's been captured, obviously, by the hard left. This is debated endlessly elsewhere, of course. And I think something similar has happened to the state meteorological company. We may well, you might have a question about it later, or we might talk about it. But I was chanced upon a fake weather broadcast that they produced at the end of June. Now, to be fair to the Met, they said it was a fake weather forecast. They produced it just to coincide with one of the heat waves that we've had. And they had one of their well-known meteorological presenters talking about the weather forecast, an invented weather forecast for 30 years hence. And of course, we had this bright purple screen, and we had temperatures that they were given a daily temperatures, some of which were up to 45 degrees centigrade. Now, where did this come from? Almost certainly it came from the UK's climate projections report, 1918. UKCP 18, which was produced almost 10 years ago now by the Met Office, where they talked about temperatures going forward to 2050. Now, for this, they used, and we've talked about it, I think, in a previous podcast, they used RCP 8.5, which is a set of computer assumptions that were always highly implausible, in fact, unbelievable. Things like, they were you'd use more coal by 2100 than actually exists in the reserves in the world. These were used for about 15 years to promote computer modeled assumptions, computer model programs. They were assumptions that were fed into computer models. And they were used by the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, for their various assessment reports. And they produced all these wild and wacky ideas that, the Gulf Stream would collapse, air turbulence was getting worse, beer was going to taste worse because of climate change, all this nonsense. You could argue that 15 years of stories were officially declared junk because in April, the IPC subcommittee looking at the next assessment report declared RCP 8.5 implausible. So anything that used 8.5 is implausible. Now, the Met Office still shows this report. It's still available to see. It was used for everything. It was used for setting regulations. It was used by banks, insurance companies to set premiums, for instance, in case of the latter. And it produced these ideas that there'd be a 5-degree warming in Britain in the summer by 2050. And so they're now producing, instead of withdrawing this thing, preferably with a fulsome apology for misleading everybody by using these ridiculous assumptions, instead of doing that, they're producing these fake weather forecasts, time with a heat wave, in order to scare people by showing Britain with temperatures of 45, 42 degrees during a particular heat wave. Now, even in the last heat wave, they were struggling to get above 35, 36, although we could argue one or two of the records, needless to say, rather dubious records, were around 38. So they're looking to produce another 5 degrees. This is coming from their particular work, which not only, which should have been withdrawn, but simply with an apology, and they're still doing it. Now, why are they doing it? Why are they, frankly, the more I look at it, why are they destroying their reputation? Why? They have gone totally down the rabbit hole of net zero, totally down the rabbit hole of whipping up fear about our climate, taking out, using junk stations that have enormous heat variations caused by our natural sources, producing these constant records from using very accurate computers, which they suddenly have started using, that measure heat spikes, which they never did before, in, of course, junk stations. And of course, as I say, you do everything they can do in order to, cause fear, to promote the net zero agenda. They are destroying, in my view, their reputation. Even so, I was sort of speculating, haven't written the article yet, I don't know if I will, but it gets to the point, what is the point of the Met Office? Hundreds of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of pounds we're spending on this state institution. But it seems to have just been captured by the net zero fanatics. What is the point? I mean, I've always said that, yes, they've like the BBC of old, they've built up this